Things are getting serious and there's a lot more to play out as we take a look at round 21 so far. Matt Thompson alongside Kane Cornes, and Power fans' hearts were broken.
Pretty good round of footy unless you are a Port Adelaide fan. They've got a nightmare against West Coast, but it was that man McGovern who sealed it after the siren again.
That is our big story, yeah. A sense of deja vu, which we'll get to, but first of all, talk us through what you were thinking when you saw this.
I just couldn't believe watching it play out. Port Adelaide, as we'll show in a moment, had moments to ice this game of footy, but credit to McGovern, who was down back for the majority of the game, swung forward by Adam Simpson, as he has done at times this year. What a great move. And then to go back calmly and slot it from there. Love the celebration, love the scenes. That just must be an absolute highlight for any AFL player, and has sealed a top 2 position for them, and they should march into the grand final from here.
Particularly after the week they've had off the field for the West Coast Eagles to come from behind. They did not lead at any point during actual play. They only led after the siren. It is a sense of deja vu going back to last year's finals, and it sounds like Luke Shuey put it on McGovern just before that kick today, but he was the man of the moment last year.
Yeah, from a similar spot, wasn't it? Now, this was in extra time in a final. You can see there with 17 seconds on the clock, he went back and did not look like missing, finished Port Adelaide's season off, kept the Eagles' season alive. So nightmares to the Riverbank stand end for Port Adelaide against the Eagles once again today.
All right, let's have a look at where this was lost for Port Adelaide in the dying state.
Port Adelaide, you can talk about injuries, you can talk about all of that. We'll get to that in a moment. But you should not lose the game from here. 2 minutes 20 on the clock. Motlop marks the ball. Go back off your mark. Do not play on in that situation. You don't need to score again. The Eagles need to score twice. He hacks a kick forward straight to the Eagles' numbers. Clearly they win the ball back. You give the opposition the ball. We're going to see it again. They had another opportunity. Cleary marks this ball. Minute 45 to go on the clock. The last thing you want to do is kick it to the Eagles' spare numbers. This is their strength. Go sideways, go backwards, take 30, take 40 seconds off the clock, then launch it wide inside 50. That kick was too straight. Force a stoppage, get your numbers there, you're in a position of control. Game over. I thought it was a lack of leadership by Port Adelaide's leaders out there, and a couple of monumental mistakes late in the game. We can talk about the last centre bounce setup as well, but there's 2 mistakes that they shouldn't be talking about injuries. They should be talking about a lack of knowing what to do in a critical stage of a game.
And you're saying it comes down to the on-field leaders as opposed to the coaches?
5 on-field leaders out there for Port Adelaide as a part of the leadership group. Hamish Hartlett's out for the season injured. Charlie Dixon is a member of the leadership group. He was off injured. So Boak, Ebert, you've got Jonas, you've got some others there that had to get around Cleary and say, mate, relax. Take your time, take 10 seconds. You've got numbers behind you. You can kick the ball backwards 10 metres and take another 20, 30, 40 seconds off the clock. Eagles still had to score twice, which they did. Game over, and potentially a final spot for Port Adelaide, who have lost the last 5 games by a combined 16 points. Port Adelaide.
All right, you talk about the injuries. We can't ignore them, despite the fact you're saying you can't blame them. Paddy Ryder with a hip flexor, first of all, could be okay. Of course, he's been managing that Achilles as well for MLC all year long.
Yeah, carnage. Just hasn't trained, Paddy Ryder, so you're going to get these little niggles. This is the big one. This is nasty. Charlie Dixon's ankle has ended his season, and this was also pretty nasty as well. Now, nothing serious there from Archie, who collected him in the marking contest. It was the ground that Houston hit his head on. We'll see it again here. So the hit there from Archie is fine. That's in the contest. Houston, bit of whiplash there and was carted off in an ambulance after the game. Just carnage for Port Adelaide. If you lose Ryder, if you lose Dixon, which you have done, pretty tough for them to play any meaningful part in the finals.
And all of that happening there with those last 2 injuries in the space of 20 seconds. But Ken Hinkley was saying after the game, like you, we can't blame these injuries. And this is what he had to say about Port's finals outlook.
It's hurt us, but it won't kill us. We'll keep coming. And that's what we'll do. We'll attack the next 2 weeks. We're currently still a part of it, and we're going to give everything we can to make sure we are part of it, because we deserve to be a part of it, and we just got to keep at it.
Do they deserve to be a part of it, Kane?
Look, I like his positivity. He's selling a message to his players where they could be defeated. Look, we've got no Ryder, we've got no Dixon, we've lost another close game. So I like the positivity. You don't deserve to be there until you're there. Now, they're 2 games away from being there. They're probably going to have to win, well, at least one of them really well, probably 2 games to get in. So I've got an issue with him saying we deserve to be there, because you don't. You've let yourself down in dying moments the last 2 weeks. You win them, then you deserve it, and then you've qualified. But until you qualify, you don't deserve it.
Well, talk about qualifying at the MCG. Hawthorn have well and truly qualified. A day out for them in front of nearly 60,000 fans against the Cats, two arch enemies. It ended being an 11-point difference, and Jager O'Meara sealed the deal.
This is just one of the coaching performances of the year. I have had Nathan Buckley as my coach of the year for most of it, but I think Clarko, it goes down as the coach of the year now. And this performance from Hawthorn, who was so good defensively today, this is the goal that sealed it from O'Meara, who we're starting to see what they recruited him for. It's that outside speed and his ability to work hard and finish. So he's improved, no doubt about that. But what a victory it is for Hawthorn, who are in a really good position right now and probably should qualify top 4 from here, remarkably, from where they've come from.
And what about where the Cats find themselves? Slipping, literally.
Yeah, no doubt the last 2 weeks have clearly hurt them. I have an issue with this. You watch Duncan here, 1 minute 25 on the clock here, game on the line. He slips over. We're going to see another one here from young Narkle. Kick the ball inside 50. No, he slips over, coughs the ball up. Hawthorn win it again. Now, this is a small thing and some people will laugh, but the modern player hates wearing screw-in boots. They hate it. I remember when I played, Coach Mark Williams used to check all of our boots. We've had record rainfall in Melbourne the last couple of days. The MCG is soggy. Small 1%ers have potentially cost Geelong the game there. Now, I bet you Duncan and Narkle didn't have screw-in boots on there. I bet you Chris Scott didn't check their boots like Mark Williams checked ours 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's old school, I know, but I reckon that could have cost them the game today.
That's a big call. I'll tell you what, this was where the Hawks got lucky, this Tom Mitchell incident. No 50-metre penalty here.
It staggers me that we are paying the ones for the 10-metre protected zone. Willy-nilly, the umpires will just pluck that out, yet they're so reluctant to pay this. Look, Mitchell has got time there. He's heard the whistle. He looks at the umpire. It's not your free kick. He hacks it forward, and there's no 50-metre penalty. That is one of the strangest decisions I've seen this year. That's exactly what the 50-metre penalty is there for, and I just don't know why that wasn't paid.
And it's arguable whether it may have made a difference, but
it doesn't matter if it made a difference. It's a clear mistake. The umpire's right there. Mitchell's looked at him. He's heard the whistle clearly because he stopped and he continued on and kicked the ball. Should have been 50.
I'll tell you what, this could have made a difference all the way back in the first quarter. What's going on here? It was clearly a behind. David Roden, the goal umpire, signals a behind, as you'll see, but the ball played, or the field umpire played on.
It's another bizarre one, isn't it? And with the history these two teams have got, lucky it didn't come down to this point. Roden and the boundary umpire, who has got a whistle. So blow your whistle, boundary umpire. You're right there. Blow your whistle and signal that it's a point, because you are standing a metre away from that decision. Can't really blame the field umpire because he might not have seen it, but the boundary umpire has some blame there.
Now, every Hawks fan you talk to, they just love this bloke. Is he going to make you a core team of the week, James Worpel?
Fair bit to play out, but the 19-year-old who was picked 45 in last year's draft is certainly having a massive impact. 23 disposals, 9 of those contested, 4 clearances, and just love his courage. He's got some good power, some good speed and good strength in the contested situations. We saw it last week against Hurley, and I love that one. That is one of the best contested ball wins of the year, up against the master Joel Selwood. So that set up a goal to Gunston. One of the goals of the year, I thought, team goals, and well done to young Worpel. We'll just have to wait and see if he makes the team of the week.
All right, the fan reaction to this particular incident, particularly from Hawthorn fans, was extraordinary. We're talking about Gary Ablett.
Yeah, I think I was pretty critical of Alex France on this program some weeks ago. This is equally as bad from Gary Ablett. That's a complete dive, and the umpire is standing right there, and he has fallen in. He's been sucked in by the lure of a superstar, Gary Ablett. That is not a free kick. That's cost them a goal, and Gary Ablett should be scrutinised by the MRO for staging that incident.
And is that because of the double action?
Oh, he's just taken a complete... Look, the contact is so insignificant now for Gary Ablett to do. It was almost like a basketball flop, as we've seen. I think looking back, Gary, despite having a very good game today, his numbers were extraordinary, but I reckon he'd be a little bit disappointed with that.
Now, Chris Scott had some interesting things to say after the Cats lost late to the Tigers last week and had their chances. What did he have to say after the game on Saturday afternoon at the G?
I think wins in the final 2 rounds will get you into the finals, Chris, or do you need other results to really go your way?
Are you asking me, or do you know?
I don't know, no.
Okay.
Looks pretty tough, though.
Does it? Yeah, I disagree. I mean, I think this one makes it harder for us. And I think, without going into the detail, don't hold me to it, but I would imagine that there's a mathematical equation that might make it difficult for us. And I could talk to you about it for ages because I've probably done the ladder predictor 500 times. But you know, it doesn't matter.
You can have a go at the ladder predictor too on afl.com.au. Chris Scott's going back to it as we speak. What did you make of the way he handled that? And do you think, I mean, they've got two pretty easy games coming up. You would suggest both at home. Do you think they'll make the finals?
I think they make it because of how soft their draw is coming now. So Fremantle and then the Suns at home, as you say. So not only will they win, but they'll win well, and it will be enough to probably dislodge Sydney or Port Adelaide from the top 8. But I'd have some concerns about their form. Their top end is good, but they're probably their bottom 10 players are not. They don't have the depth that some other sides do. So I'd be surprised if they won a final.
To Canberra next. What is the coldest conditions you've ever played in, you reckon?
Probably in Geelong.
Yeah, right.
Rain sideways. Played in Canberra a couple of times. Usually pretty nice, but what was it? Minus.
It was 3.9 degrees. That was as low as it got during the game. They're expecting an overnight low of -1. Very cold in the nation's capital, but it was pretty hotly contested, including this particular tackle from Taylor Walker on Josh Kelly.
Big talking point, isn't it? It was a dirty night for Taylor Walker. He was held goalless, just 6 disposals in what's been a pretty average year from the Crows captain. He's been reported already this year for a hit on Geelong's Zach Toohey, and he'll get reported for this and deserves to do so. When you weigh, I think there's a duty of care. When you weigh 100-odd kilos, you're tackling a bloke that weighs 85, so you've got 15 kilos on him, the ball is not there, and you tackle him and continue to drive him into the ground as Tex did, I think he'll miss a week for that, particularly because Josh Kelly was off concussed, didn't take any further part in the game, and it's a pretty dangerous tackle.
To Heath Shaw now, who was injured late in the piece. This is very disappointing for Giants fans. It sounds like he's going to be out for a while.
No, he's been having a good year too, Heath Shaw, the veteran. This is another blow for them. You know, when is the tipping point for the Giants? We've spoken about it with Geelong, but that 6 weeks is confirmed by Heath post-match after the game. So tough for him to come back and play again this season, unfortunately. And it's another one down for them.
Now, I don't like picking on the umpires at all, but what about this? I'm not sure if the cold was getting to the goal umpire as we see Aidan Bonner kick it clearly through the behind posts. Listen to what the umpire asked for here.
Score review. Umpire's call is behind. Can we confirm that it went through the behinds and not out on the full?
Out on the full?
I'm not sure. We're not having a good run.
Out on the full?
I thought it was pretty clear point. And for them to not be sure if it went out in the full or through for a behind, I'm sure it was just a slip of the tongue. I hope it was anyway.
All right, a 14-point win for the Giants, a 31-point win for the Magpies against the Lions at Etihad Stadium. The one incident we do need to highlight out of this particular game is this incident with Greenwood and Zorko.
Yeah, so Zorko goes down in the marking contest. Clearly he's affected by an ankle injury. Now, Levi Greenwood's got the job on him, and he just comes over and annoys him. There's not a lot in it, is there? But the AFL hate this sort of stuff. Remember back to when Nick Riewoldt, a young Nick Riewoldt, injured his collarbone, and the Brisbane Lions players really came after him at the Gabba. So this is an unwritten law amongst all players that if someone's injured, you leave them alone. So I think the AFL will look at it, perhaps a fine or some sort of warning. I don't think he misses a week for that, Levi Greenwood, but it's just not a good look.
You've been wondering where our Saturday star is in the rundown. Well, here he is. You cannot go past Jack Riewoldt, Kane. A 10-goal haul for him today.
It's almost the best individual performance this year, I think. 10 goals, 16 scoring shots. He took something like 14 marks and now he's 4 in front of the Coleman medal, which we'll look at in a minute. But he's having an amazing run of form. His last 5 or 6 weeks, he's almost the hottest player in the competition. Certainly with Tom Hawkins, probably the hottest forward. And he's a lock in the All-Australian team now, I think. And a terrific performance by not only him, but his Richmond teammates today.
We don't often mention fantasy on this particular show, but 192 AFL fantasy points. That is incredible. Let's look at the Coleman and how it shapes up right now, because all of a sudden Jack Riewoldt is atop the list. Ben Brown can obviously catch up to him. We'll see what happens there. Lance Franklin still to play this round and Jesse Hogan as well. But Jack Riewoldt on fire. Now, the big story from Friday night football was Nathan Brown's bump on Sard, and the news is that Sard's feeling much better today, but Nathan Brown from St Kilda has been sent straight to the tribunal. It's been assessed as intentional, high contact and high impact.
It has been. Look, I see it a little bit different to some others who are outraged by it, I think, on social media. And when you do slow it down, it is really late. There's no doubt about that. But in full speed, Brown is running at full speed trying to pressure him. The hit isn't high. It's to the shoulder, and the damage was done by the whiplash because Saad wasn't ready for the contact. Now, if Saad was aware that someone was coming and braced for contact, the result would have been different. So he'll miss weeks. It was late. The impact was there, but he didn't get him high. I'd be disappointed if he missed more than 2 weeks.
So Lee Matthews, who obviously knows a thing or two about playing hard at the footy, and had some incidents which have been highlighted, of course, over the past week with the gaff thing, he reckons that there should be a red card if a player is injured and off for the game and it was a deliberate act, then there should be a send-off rule in footy. What's your view?
No, I don't like red card talk at all. I just think it's such a discussion point. I mean, half the footy public would have that as a send-off, half wouldn't. I personally would hate to see a player get sent off for a play that's in play. It's not high. I didn't think there was no elbow, there was no punch. I didn't think it was particularly dirty, so I wouldn't like to see it, but some would. So there's the debate. If we can't agree, how are the umpires in a matter of seconds or minutes going to come up with what is a big decision that if you send someone off and they're down to 17 and it's early in the game, you lose. So I just think it's far too big a call. We don't see enough dirty incidents in the game to warrant it, in my view.
You certainly have to send it to video. It wouldn't be the on-field umpire that would make the call. Anyway, that debate will continue. Let's look at the ladder for you. The Tigers on top on 64 points. West Coast on 60. The Giants then 6 points behind on 54. Hawthorn and Collingwood each on 52, and then really, really tight for these final spots in the 8, with Melbourne, of course, to play, and Sydney against Sydney. We'll talk about that in a second. Port Adelaide right in the mix there still. Geelong still in contention. And then, as we can see, the bottom of the ladder is a similar story as it has been for much of the year. So to the rest of the round, and as we look at that, we should mention that Bernie Vince in the VFL injured. His season is over, a serious shoulder injury, and he's out of contract too, so he may not get a new deal. But some big games tomorrow, highlighted by Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah,
and a huge opportunity for North Melbourne as well. Their ears were pricked up with Port Adelaide losing, and certainly if Sydney lose as well, their season is well and truly alive. Massive game for Melbourne. I think they're the one right now, with all the injuries to the Giants and the Eagles and Collingwood, they're the team that can really challenge Richmond.
Now, one more thing before we go, Kane, just wanting to rub it in slightly. Nick Natanui was watching from the west.
He's making a habit of this.
Let's have a look.
It's happening again. Yeah, boy. Oh, no.
He couldn't believe it.
Get stuffed, Nick.
Kane Cornes with us. That is the round so far. We'll catch you next week.